Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to the webinar, Digital Transformation in Finance under the NBS Knowledge Lab webinar series. I'm excited to know we have more than 450 registrants from 29 countries joining us today. My name is Deng Xin. I'm an associate professor here at Banking and Finance Division, Nanyang Business School. I'm delighted to be the moderator of this webinar, and we are very honored to have four extremely distinguished speakers with extensive experience in financial industry, who will share with us their observations and insights on the digital transformation happening in the market. After that, there will be Q&A time at the end, so please do feel free to type questions in the Q&A box. Now, please allow me to briefly introduce our speakers. First, we have Ms. Carrie Liao. She is the CEO of Minterest Private Limited, a leading non-bank fintech company with dual license in Singapore, focused on bringing financial inclusion to corporate and individual borrowers. Ms. Liao has more than 19 years of professional experience in Asian markets. She holds a bachelor degree in accountancy with first-class honor from NTU. Next, alphabetically, we have Mr. Alan Lin. He is the Managing Director and Head of Core Cash Management, Asian Pacific for JP Morgan Wholesale Payment Business. In his role, Mr. Lin drives the firm's core cash management strategy and channel offerings across the region. In his 28 years of banking career, Mr. Lin has held various leadership positions in transaction banking. We also have Mr. Desmond Ong from JP Morgan. Mr. Ong is the Executive Director and Asia Pacific Head of Access Digital Channels for JP Morgan Wholesale Payments. He drives the digital channel and open banking API product strategy for wholesale payments business in the region. In his 18 years of career, he holds several roles across technology and implementation. He is currently studying the NBS EMBA program. Last, but certainly not the least, we have Mr. Shadab Tayabi. He is the president of Singapore Fintech Association. The association is a platform designed to facilitate collaborations between all market participants in the fintech ecosystem. Mr. Tayabi has over 16 years of experience working in the regulatory sectors, big institutions, and fintech firms. He is our alumni of MFE program. So to our speakers today, a warm welcome back to NTU, and thank you so much for generously taking time out and making this event happen. As we know that digital solutions and new technologies are transforming many industries, the finance industry is not exempt from this wave. While fintech firms are reinventing the market, we have been hearing the word disruption again and again. However, the impact of technology on financial industry is deeply rooted. It's not a new phenomenon. The start of digitalization journey of financial industry was not several years ago. Instead, if consider the first ATM machine, which was rated the greatest financial invention in recent history, is more than 50 years ago. The idea was from a chocolate bar dispenser, but replacing chocolate with cash. People would never expect ATM could fundamentally change our relationship with money, with payments, and with banks. That being said, what is the difference for the recent development of digital transformation in financial industry? I would say the impact of technology is much deeper, much wider, and much quicker. There is a number. The ratio of ATM cash withdrawal to e-payments has fallen from 47% to 17% in the past 5 years. Very soon, the younger generation will probably wonder what is the ATM, or probably we won't see ATM on the street anymore. Without further ado, let me first invite Mr. Tayabi. Mr. Tayabi, I know that you have taken the role as the president of Fintech Association for half a year. It must be very exciting to be a part of evolving ecosystem of fintech. As Singapore is building itself as a nation of fintech, can you please share with us what does the landscape of fintech ecosystem in Singapore look like? And what is the role of Singapore regulator in building fintech nation? What are the opportunities and the challenges do you see in fintech in next 2 to 5 years? Over to you, Mr. Tayabi, please.
Well, thank you very much, Prof. Cindy. And hi to everyone. It's a pleasure to be speaking at an NTU event. Of course, as some of you might know, NTU plays a very important role, has played a very important role in my overall personal development as well as the career journey all throughout. And of course, I'm an alumni of both the Computer Engineering, School of Computer Engineering, as well as the NBS, having read here, having studied both bachelor's and master's degrees. So let me just, first of all, throw a bit of a color on the Singapore as the smart financial center. So why Singapore has the perfect ingredients to be the smart financial center? Let me just touch on that first before I go on and delve a bit deeper on the questions that Prof. Cindy have asked. So let's talk about the Singapore as a country. We have the foundation which actually provides the opportunity. So let's look at the some of the broader numbers or broader areas. We are the world's one of the largest financial services hub. We are the world's third largest in terms of foreign exchange center after London and New York. We are very open. We have some of the largest local banks, and we have 100 plus foreign commercial banks that are operating out of Singapore. And there are numerous number of insurance and reinsurance companies as well. Of course, we are blessed to have a very progressive regulator as well, and there are certain aspects of it that I will touch in a short while. But more importantly, on the fintech landscape itself, the regulatory sandbox was set up in 2016, which has played a huge role in helping some of the companies and fintech companies to actually grow. The regulator also set up the Fintech Innovation Group as well, which is quite unique for a regulator to set up. And of course, some of the technology trends that are actually helping this fintech ecosystem to grow are, of course, AI, blockchain, Internet of Things, and cloud computing. I don't want to go into the depth of each one of them in this forum, but you can see that there are a lot of tailwinds to push us through. Then, of course, we have a strong talent pool of local and international people in Singapore who actually help grow with their professionalism and with their skill set. Now, let me just touch quickly on the fintech landscape in Singapore. If you look at this, you can see that Singapore has more or less become the center of fintech innovation. And just looking at the growth that has happened in the past 5 years, some of the numbers here, we were close to less than 100 fintechs in 2015. Back in 2020, the number is more than 1,000. It's actually 1,400. When the whole fintech ecosystem growth journey started in Singapore, the companies combined together had only 1,100 employees. Now it has actually grown to more than 10,000 employees in 5 years. And Singapore has been ranked as one of the highest ranked fintech cities recently as well in some of the surveys. Now, if you look at some of the segments that we cover, it includes payments and remittances, lending and credit, personal finance and wealth management, where some of my experience and expertise lies in. And of course, there are players who have been contributing not just to the growth of the Singapore fintech ecosystem, but also the broader Asian and global fintech ecosystem as well. And as you might be aware, we have had our first fintech unicorn, which is a Singapore born and bred unicorn, Niam. They became a unicorn earlier this year as well. So it just shows in the past 5 or 6 years, the industry has grown rapidly as well. And some of the, if you look at the diversity of the fintechs that we are covering, across the board, of course, payments and remittances, since that segment started early, they have a larger proportion. And of course, you have wealth management and capital markets, other areas such as RegTech, InsurTech, lending and credit. We have Caris speaking as well later. She's a founder of one of the lending companies as well. Now, let me just give a bit of a color on the fintech funding as well. Singapore, as you can see, is the center of fintech ecosystem, at least in APAC. If you look at these numbers, it clearly defines that. If you look at the cumulative fintech investment that has come into Southeast Asian markets from 2015 to 2019, Singapore is way far ahead of the second country. So this just shows the interest and the maturity of the fintech ecosystem that we have had in Singapore, and which is growing. And some of this are very well supported by our public sector as well. So our regulators or our policymakers were very quick to launch these programs such as the FSTI 1.0, FSTI 2.0 to help grow the innovation ecosystem, to help create the infrastructure. We launched the regulatory sandbox, as I talked about. We launched the API Exchange, which is an open architecture platform to support the financial institutions and fintechs to collaborate amongst each other. We have also launched certain ecosystem initiatives, including Block 71, the ATRR FinTech Hub, where SFA, the Singapore Fintech Association, is based at. And all these initiatives have led to creating the smart financial center that we are going towards. And there are multiple initiatives that have taken place on the government side, including setting up the SingPass to start with all the way in 2003, Pay Now, and then recently the SGQR code as well. Given the time frame, I just want to focus quickly on what role does Singapore Fintech Association play as well. So if you look at the Singapore Fintech Association, we have been around for about 6 years now, and if you look at our 5 years now, then we have our corporate member base. You look at the numbers, we are close to like 1,000 members already, and we cover various segments. We represent various segments of the ecosystem altogether. We have an individual or a professionals network as well, which we have created or launched earlier this year in a very different format, which is called the Singapore Fintech Club. And we also have these various industry verticals and cross-industry vertical subcommittees, which we have created, and we are launching more as well. So you can see we cover all the way from payments to green and sustainable, which is more cross-industry focused interest groups. So these subcommittees comprise of reps and individuals from various companies which are part of that industry segment or represent the cross-industry group as well. Now, as the association grows, of course, we have set our certain strategic objectives or initiatives that we want to drive. But all these initiatives have the common vision to grow Singapore as the global fintech hub. And we have sort of devised, and this is based on feedback from our whole member base, 6 pillars to achieve our vision. Most importantly, being the voice of Singapore FinTech. So we work very closely with the policymakers to shape the guidelines, the regulations, to provide the feedback coming in from the founders and senior management, as well as helping grow the business across various countries as well, simplifying access to capital, so creating more efficiencies in their investing journeys, as well as growing the fintech talent pool. So we work very closely with institutes of higher learnings, universities, polytechnics, to make sure that there is enough talent pool available for the fintech ecosystem to thrive further. Now, just to talk about some of the support that we provide our members is, of course, networking and connections, creating the business growth opportunities, the discounts and benefits that we provide to them, as well as the knowledge and expertise. This is all tied in together because in the end, there is support from regulators, there is vibrance in the community that we work on with our members closely together, and also make sure that we work with the IHLs to grow the overall talent pool. So the jobs portal and the digital self-assessment framework are also key focus areas for us. Now, I could have talked about this as well, which is the professional individual network that we have created, SD Fintech Club. But let me just touch briefly on the points. This network has been created, and as some of you are students or alumni of NTU, please feel free to join as this network, because it will help you to learn more what's happening in the overall fintech ecosystem. You'll be able to network with interesting people, bounce off some of your ideas if you're looking at setting up something of your own. But the idea is to create that vibrance in the community so people can learn from each other, people can collaborate, and there are more and more companies being born out of Singapore. Just very quickly touching base on the opportunities and challenges. Of course, there are great opportunities in terms of the credential portability that's happening. So if there's our companies can actually work to expand their business overseas, but there are opportunities coming in with ID verification, credit history to become more standardized across the various countries. There's more collaboration coming between the FIs and fintechs as well. I work for an asset management firm myself, and my job is to work closely with the fintechs to collaborate and look for opportunities to work together. And then there is one important element that Singapore is putting its real money where the mouth is, which is essentially feet, coming up with standardized framework on fairness, ethics, accountability, transparency, specifically with AI and data analytics. And of course, the challenges are there. Most importantly, the tech talent, which is where we need to work closely with the IHLs to grow the fintech talent pool, middle management talent as well, people converting or transitioning from one industry to another, and of course the tech risk management differences that are there across jurisdictions, because most of our companies are B2B companies or expanding overseas. So we need to work with them to help standardize some of these risk management differences that are there across jurisdictions. With that, I will close and say, please find out more about SFA, and please join the SG FinTech Club as well if you have the time. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Tayabi. Your sharing is very helpful in helping us to understand the general picture of fintech development in Singapore. And also it's good to know like all this membership with the association. I think that is very important for us to grow a healthy ecosystem of fintech. Thank you again. So as we know that fintech firms have seen a lot of growth and success in recent years, and people think that may present challenges to traditional banks. Now I think it's time to invite Mr. Lin from JP Morgan to share with us his perspectives from big financial institutions.
Thank you very much. It's really great pleasure to be here. The NTU webinar with so many participants. I know many of you are students going to the business sector, and many of you are now alumni who are professional participants in the market. So thanks a lot again for Mr. Tayabi sharing so many exciting things about Singapore fintech development. Now I'm switching to from a bank perspective. I think bank is providing service to our client, and my job in JP Morgan is really provide a banking solution to corporate and different type of institutions, and we work closely with the treasurers. So the big trend is that things are moving to e-commerce, right? I know we all understand. Let me borrow one statistic from Statista. Global retail market is a $25 trillion US market, and 4.5 trillion has been moved to e-commerce. So those activities happen via e-commerce model, 4.5 trillion, so 20% or so. When we talk to our corporate treasurer, I think there are three key requirements for them to prepare for the future. Number one is the corporate treasurer looking at real time and 24/7 service availabilities. Since their procurement and sales are moving online, so they need actively manage their treasury at that capacity. Then the second is that they're using data for data analytic, for better decision making, and also they leverage the open banking solution to exchange information seamlessly with the bank. The number three is more interesting, that many treasurers look at their business model, their logistic, and they want to work together with the bank and the fintech company. So in this area, a lot of cooperation between bank and fintech company. They want to have end-to-end treasury process, very, very smooth. And therefore, there's a lot of innovation in that area. People keep talking about COVID-19 pandemic. I hope we can all come out from this and everybody keeps safe from this situation. I want to share two interesting insights, right? Without saying, we all know that would help us accelerate the digitization. But two interesting insights that for many, many years, bank is trying to get rid of the wet-in signature. And it was marginal success, not major success. But during this pandemic, the e-signature adoption become very, very good. And company, because of the restriction, then start to use e-signature tool to sign document exchange with the bank. In addition to that, JP Morgan, for example, we also put a virtual assistant service for customer. It's a chat box using artificial intelligence to answer questions. So customer, they work remotely. They don't really call the call center, but they go to our internet platform. What we did was we put up certain preset questions for the customer to click and use and get answer immediately. So that's another interesting observation during this time. Now, then I guess I want to share a bit more of the industry observation and insight of the company and institution treasurer, their digital transformation. According to McKinsey estimate, right, annual spend for global corporate on software and technology is about 3.5 billion. It's big amount of money. In addition to the traditional investment of the corporate in ERP and treasury system, allow this money go into new tool, including artificial intelligence, robotic, blockchain, big data. What they try to do is the new technology to meet their future needs. Companies are at different stage of their transformation journey. And treasury is looking at, I want to throw three things, right? There are three themes, right? One is a digital treasury. Next sophistication level is a smart treasury. And the third sophistication level is transformative treasury. So let me go to that one by one. So digital treasury basically is use all the available tool, be it offered from bank or from fintech company, or in US, Europe, a lot of software company play here, provide a lot of good services. But basically what customer wants is to eliminate the paper, automate the time-consuming and error-prone manual process, use machine learning or artificial intelligence to help the reconciliation process, and whenever possible, leverage the real-time payment and real-time information solution available. In the implication or the real practice in the business field, JP Morgan, for example, we offer a tool to digitize all the paper exchange between client and the bank. So company make cross-border payment, need to provide supporting document, we digitalize this. Company need to make tax statutory payment, need to provide certain document, we digitize by providing the tool. So, and API for this is really enabler, right? And company use the API for data exchange, starting with data exchange, getting report, getting information, but then subsequently use that to initiate payments. So pretty much the digital treasury moving to a paperless automation environment. The second is smart treasury. A company is not really happy. We just made the day-to-day efficient. They want to be able to forecast the future. Based on the PwC Treasurer Survey, for many years in a row, cash flow forecasting is their #1 response. So all the treasurers are looking at how to predict the future because they can better manage their FX position. They can have a robust planning, hedging, financing, and investment decision for the future. Typically, the tool, JP Morgan also provide a tool as well as other fintech company. They provide liquidity vision, so we know exactly how much liquidity you have by country, by entity. They look at the payment flow to analyze your counterparty, who you pay to, who you collect from, and look at the corridor of the payment to do the FX analysis. They also use artificial intelligence and machine learning to project for the future. So many companies start to use this, and we are getting a lot of traction to go into this smart treasury model. And finally, the third one is transformative treasury. There's a lot of new tool that company are working with the bank and fintech company on POC. Basically, it's co-creation area where everybody get together to solve a difficult problem. Some of the leading company, they are moving very fast, so they want to be ahead of the curve. But for this particular topic, I just want to focus on one interesting topic on blockchain for payment. We all know that for cross-border payments, and sometimes very complex, right? In the industry, people talk about the new rail and the old rail. The old rail refer more to the current rail, which is the SWIFT, where remitting banks send money to intermediary banks send money to the beneficiary bank and credit to the beneficiary. SWIFT is making a lot of progress to improve the services, such as their GPI offering. So when payer making the payment, by paying bank, intermediary bank, and beneficiary bank, once the beneficiary credit to the beneficiary, they will send better status from beneficiary bank back to intermediary bank to the paying bank. So you can have full visibility end to end. However, the data is really store and forward to do a round trip, right? Send the payment, get the status back. That's the current rail, but it's also functioning quite well. But the new rail, where for a lot of bank, fintech company try to disrupt and move to the end model, is leveraging blockchain. The concept is simple, is that everybody's on the chain and we are making everything at once. We are exchanging money, settle the money and get the information at the same time. So things being resolved instantly, you get certainty, you get transparency, and it's really fit for the future. So JP Morgan, for example, recently, if you have seen the press, have launched this together with NBS and Temasek, with a new rail called Partior, P-A-R-T-I-O-R. And then we are very glad that we are in the forefront of the journey to transform to a new digital world ahead of the curve. So I hope this sharing is useful for all of you, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Ms. Lin. Really, we learned a few takeaways of digital transformation in corporate treasury side. And actually, we may hear a lot about like application of fintech, but in daily life. But actually, I think this information is about like a cash flow forecast, about like a real-time transactions. I think that's really important for all those multinational big corporations. And also, as you mentioned, one of the key enabler of digital transformation is API technology. And we know API is accelerating the pace of innovation. And the use of API, or open banking, this concept allows third-party service providers to access banks' data and making the collaborations between FIs and the fintech possible. So I think next we can invite Mr. Lin's colleague, Mr. Ong from JP Morgan, and to share his perspective. Mr. Ong, can you please share with us, first, of course, the most important concept, what is API? And perhaps you can share some example of API applications which are related with our daily life and how this API transforming the business process and the corporate treasury and finance landscape. And maybe like what are the challenges for corporate to adopt API and how fintechs can leverage open banking or API technology to collaborate with FIs. Over to you, Mr. Ong, please.
Yeah. Hi, everyone, and thanks, Prof. Cindy, for inviting us to speak in the webinar. And my name is Desmond. I'm also an NTU graduate and alumni of EEE, School of Engineering. So I'm happy to share with you some perspective of the API development. But before we go into API, right, one of the key things that I would just want to highlight is what we are seeing is digital transformation. And according to a central survey, 76% or more than 70% of the treasurers and finance directors believe that the business model will be unrecognizable in the near future or to the mid future. The other thing that we are looking at is more than 80% believe that the digital ecosystem strategy is important to their business. And that is where the API technology in terms of all this connectivity plays an important part in this digitization. So what is API? Since everybody is saying this is important. So I would explain in very layman term. API is technically a system-to-system connectivity. That is where a small programming code is deployed and it connects two systems together where all the information can flow in real time. And importantly, this is widely used in all our back offices. API is not relatively new, except that the concept is new because right now it's more exposed to allow corporates and financial institutions to open up their data, their information to third-party providers, such as a fintech company that Mr. Tayabi was mentioning just now. So with the population of these fintechs, API is an important part of the technology that they are using. Because of this real-time connectivity, it's not just providing a real-time request, it is also providing back a real-time response. And for many of us, maybe we are already, not maybe, we're already using API in almost our daily part of life. If you look at our smartphone, have you ever wondered, in our smartphone, we just download a small application, yet we can have a lot of API real-time response. Like for example, looking at those like Grab applications, looking at those some of those smart apps or restaurant apps or whatever apps that you downloaded on your mobile, including a weather app just to check what is the weather of each city, right? All these are pulling data in real time, but compared to what you have in your back office, is not installing a huge or buying a expensive ERP or treasury management system. It's just a small piece of code that you install on your mobile apps and you start to pull in real time. In fact, Singapore, to Mr. Tayabi's point, right, is definitely one of the key, I would say a key center for fintechs and all this, but the government is also extremely supportive in terms of the GovTech, the government technology team department, right, that is opening up all the API. That's where you can check your bus timings, you can check your bus arrival, and as well as where's the bus route and all this, all are using API. So that is where API is really playing a transformational role in terms of enabling all this connectivity to be in real time. It is where we need to touch on, right? With this technology, how do we see the technology transforming the business process as well as in the finance and the treasury function? So if we look at, once we have the ability to create in real time and on demand, whenever we want it, we use it in our mobile phone. So if we take a step back, look at some of our treasury and the finance function, as well as some of the ecosystem in all these treasury and finance functions. They are typically using many of those, I would say, legacy platforms. There are many of them using, well, I would say multiple partners, multiple banks that create challenges. Just take as simple as looking at a bank account. Let's not talk about very sophisticated way of looking at it. Let's look at a simple way of many of our corporates or many of the companies have multiple bank accounts. So if you really look into all this cash flow visibility, that is where the challenges come in. They have a limited visibility in terms of getting a partial view and not on a real-time basis. And most importantly, is IT heavy and IT driven when that automation comes into the finance and the treasury space. And this will impact the working capital, as well as the ability to make a strategic decisions, as well as to look at the dynamics of the current economy that is impacted by COVID. The ability to have a real-time cash flow, cash visibility is really something that is also making an impact. The other way that I would say is also look at the payments. So earlier we look at the cash position, cash visibility. Now let's look at payments. So many of the corporates are using traditional payments, whether it's online keying in of the payments or is via sending automation, but these are not real time. And look at what is our payment landscape now, especially in Singapore. We have Pay Now, we have fast payment, and look at our neighbors, the ASEAN economies. They are all rolling out real-time infrastructure that is rapidly transforming the payment landscape. So with all these real-time payments that are already in place, not just in Singapore, but on ASEAN perspective, API will play an important role. That is where a real-time payment comes in. So right now, corporates have the opportunity to leverage on real-time payment rails to pay payrolls in real time. And that is an important, this will give them better funding, better cash in terms of holding the cash longer instead of paying like 2 or 3 days in advance, like our normal gyro, traditional gyro, where it takes 2 or 3 days to debit, to move the money from the bank into the beneficiary. So this enhances the process where corporates can hold cash longer, making it a better cash flow management. And look at the other direction of it is also about the collection. So typically collection is always one of the challenges where if you would like to collect the money faster and free up the credit line of their customers so that they can sell more. So if something that can come in a more faster manner where they can recognize the cash, that is where the order to cash gets speeds up, and then that will be able to allow them to sell more to free up the credit line. So and that will improve the whole days DSO, where the days sales outstanding. So that really improved the whole working capital management in terms of the business case for some of these where API is applicable and it can transform the landscape. So if we look at the other dimension, so all these are benefits of the API. So what are some of the challenges? Why are the corporates not rapidly going into this API, transforming the whole landscape and doing the digitization? I think one of the key challenges that is frequently highlighted in terms of what are some of the common challenges is lack of standardization. So this is typically a fairly common problem. Like for a corporate or a company to adopt this kind of innovative technology, one thing is there a standardization? Does it apply to all the banks or to all the financial institutions or to all their vendors or suppliers they're supporting? Is the whole ecosystem standardized? That is where banks like JP Morgan, we follow the industry standard protocol, but again, right, there is no widely recognized standards in API, although we have they follow around a certain technology format such as a JSON format. Sorry, this is a little bit technical in nature, but it is still challenging in the sense that there is no standardization where if I today use one API for one bank, can I scale it up for the rest of the banks or the scale up to the rest of the partners? So that is a challenging part of it. The second challenges is the legacy platform. As we mentioned earlier, many of the corporates, traditional corporates, or still have the legacy platform versus the fintech partners or the other e-commerce players that both Mr. Tayabi and Alan has mentioned. So that is where these are the challenges that's imposing on the corporates. And lastly, right, how does corporates can overcome all these challenges? That is a partnership with fintechs that Mr. Tayabi has mentioned. That's where we have a lot of fintechs in Singapore, because fintech typically solve a market challenge. And that is the important part of it. That is where the fintech, many of these fintechs are data aggregators, as well as ability to provide seamless connectivity, interaction with the partners, creating something like a platform as a service or a similar kind of a software as a service concept. And with that, right, the fintech will be able to help to align the ecosystem as well as helping to bring on board the various partners into a common platform. And I would like right now to hand over to Prof. Cindy to have on the next part of it where they'll talk more a little bit on the fintech side.
Thanks, Ms. Song, for the sharings. Trust that all of us now have better understanding of API and how it enables the collaborations between financial institutions and the fintechs. So we probably will come back to you and still say a few questions about like this API technologies. But now, as we know that along this digital transformation journeys of financial industry, and the fintech firms are considered as disruptor. Last but not least, let's invite Ms. Liao from Minterest to share with us from the angle of fintech startup. Ms. Liao, could you please share with us how do you see the role of fintech company in the digitalization journey of financial industry? And maybe you can also share more about Minterest as a digital investment platform and what it does. How does Minterest fit within the recent development of fintech industry? Also, I know that you have 19 years of working experience in traditional financial sector. I believe that our attendees probably would like to hear your suggestions about how mid-career professionals can prepare themselves if they want to get into fintech space. Ms. Liao, over to you, please.
Thanks a lot, Prof. Cindy. Hi, everyone. I'm Karis. I'm also an alumni of NTU, and it's my pleasure to be here today. So thanks, Prof. Cindy and NTU, for inviting me to this session. And I think it has been great hearing insights from Shadab, Alan, and Desmond earlier. So please allow me to share a couple of slides with all of you. I think as previously shared earlier, the Singapore fintech industry has grown tremendously over the last 5 years. Now, while some sectors in Singapore have been negatively impacted by COVID, the financial activities in the digital space have actually expanded. And as Shadab shared earlier, right, this industry currently has more than 1,400 fintechs, accounting for more than 10,000 professionals working in the industry alone. And Singapore is also now Asia Pacific's highest ranking fintech city, with 40% of Southeast Asia fintechs based in Singapore. We've also seen that investments have been pouring into fintech firms as Singapore seeks to be a regional hub for capital raising. And such investments have risen from a mere 20 million in 2014 to a record 1.1 billion last year, and more is expected this year. I'd like to quote Bill Gates, who very famously said back in 1994 that banking is necessary, but banks are not. And we fast forward 27 years to today, and we see the unbundling of financial services, where emerging technologies are springing up new business models, such as the digital banks, neobanks, robo-advisors, insurtech, mobile payment companies that disrupt the way people pay, lend, invest, and borrow. And this disruption is primarily caused by the rapidly evolving customer needs, behaviors, and expectations. So as a customer, we can now expect anytime, anywhere, personalized user experience, and i.e. you can bring a bank everywhere, but not necessarily do such transactions at a bank. And closer to home, as a Singapore company that is based and focused on within the alternative investment space, we see a high investor willingness to adopt digital channels. But we see 2 out of 3 financial transactions now take place online globally, and there is a very high smartphone penetration rate of 88% in Singapore, which is amongst the highest worldwide. And savvy investors, have an average wealth per adult of about $300,000, and they are seeking, demand for real estate products, and that's evidenced by a very large private real estate market, as well as a highly developed REIT sector. So moving on to the next slide, about Minterest, we are about connecting people to opportunities within our own digital financial ecosystem. We aim to democratize access into the alternative investment space, offering diversified investment opportunities across various asset classes. And we focus on providing diversified and well-structured investment opportunities to investors, such as institutional grade real estate products, corporate financing, as well as structured solutions. Now, if you look across the region, private capital under asset management within this area has expanded 6-fold over the last decade. It rose from 388 billion at the end of 2011 to over 1.7 trillion last year in September 2020. So there's a huge inflow of capital coming into Asia, focused on private capital. And through the Minterest platform, what we aim to do is to democratize private credit, giving access to investors who can now invest from $2,000 into an institutional commercial real estate product. And beyond real estate investing, we also have a cost-efficient platform for capital raising. So we leverage on our deep sectoral experience and proprietary credit risk models to deliver risk-adjusted returns to our global investors. We understand that no two businesses are alike, and hence we leverage on our own credit scoring algorithm to assess the creditworthiness of each borrower based on the unique combination of both traditional and non-traditional information, such as transactional data and psychometrics. So now this ability allows us to effectively bridge previously untapped streams of capital with businesses and investments that would otherwise have typically opted for traditional funding vehicles to provide the best financial outcome for our clients. In terms of how we fit into the wider financial services ecosystem, we typically forge our partnerships with large corporates and also various local and international financial institutions. And technology is our key driver. And as a responsible platform, we focus on originating quality deals that focus on delivering risk-adjusted returns to our liquidity providers. In so doing, we hope we are enhancing and creating value to the entire financial ecosystem by allowing participants direct access to opportunities. And moving on to the last slide, I think professionals would like to hear how they can better prepare themselves in the fintech space. With the unprecedented shift, right, in terms of how fintech is propelling financial services, talented and qualified professionals are definitely required to add value. And the fintech job market is actually primarily led by digital transformation. So what does that mean? It basically means that jobs are created primarily digitally led, right? So as one of the fastest growing industries, the industry is well suited to people who are generally passionate about technology, those who want to have access to or work with newer technologies, or basically want to experience working with newer technologies. And specifically in demand, fintech jobs are primarily driven by relationship management, wealth management, sales roles for front office, to fintech ops, legal and finance within the backend roles, and professionals with strong fundamental in financial skills, as well as investor sales with solid understanding of financial products. And fundamentals are also highly sought after. And of course, within the fintech industry, careers in IT security is very important, such as those in cloud security or network security. It's because companies will need help to combat and prepare for possible threats and cyber attack risks as they become more sophisticated. And of course, with a lot of fintech apps, with front-end interfacing with computers and mobile apps, roles such as UX designer, UI designer, project manager, as well as programmers within the developer roles are also very highly sought after. So basically, if you're looking to move into the fintech sector, it's advisable to keep upgrading and reskilling yourself and exposing yourself to new technologies, such as trying and testing out new digital innovative fintech services, such as cross-border remittances, online investments, etc., are also very valuable. Of course, other important factors to consider are also soft skills, such as trustworthiness, collaboration, if you are great at working across dynamic teams, adaptability towards evolving business needs, as well as possessing a strong desire to be curious about things that you come across in terms of obtaining more knowledge and information, expanding the skill sets and sharing knowledge with others is also very important. So I hope this has been useful for all of you. I'll pass the time back to Prof. Cindy.
Thanks, Ms. Liao. Thanks very much. And with your sharings, I think now first we have better ideas like how fintech firms extend financial services to underserved groups, and also is very helpful and for all these career suggestions. And after hearing all the sharings from our four distinguished speakers, I say like a couple of questions streaming in. And now let's move into Q&A segment. Shall we invite our four speakers to turn on your video? Thank you very much. Okay, so I see there are already several questions, and I also encourage other guys, like if you have questions, do type in the Q&A box. First, I say there are a couple questions addressed to Alan and Desmond. So maybe let me address the first question to Alan. So what's your view on virtual banking and non-bank big tech payments? For instance, do you think traditional banks will lose retail deposits to virtual banks and non-bank payments providers like Facebook or Alipay?
I think this is an interesting question, right? So we know there's a lot of non-bank, and I think great regulators getting more and more attention on what non-bank can do. So I think overall picture is this, right? So there are certain fintech company, they're providing non-bank providing certain banking activity, and typically those activities are specific flow or certain type of activities. I think we have also seen that many countries that now there's a digital bank. So many of the leading non-bank fintech who is doing well, they also apply the digital bank. I guess bank, we all understand it's important industry, and arguably need to have certain regulated monitoring for this industry. So I think it would be interesting if there's in the future, right, certain specific activity, certain non-bank fintech will still do well. But once those fintech want to expand, typically they will probably go to get a digital bank license and then be able for them to do more. So I think they'll be balancing around that. So interesting story in the future is the traditional bank. They try to do more, new solution, similar like a fintech. There's a digital bank, right? Many of them are converting from a fintech, and also certain fintech will still be there. So the future market will be very, very exciting and interesting.
Thanks, Ms. Lin. Thanks very much, to explaining this big tech payments and the bank payments is very insightful. I think next I'm going to pass the second question to Desmond. What's your view on central bank digital currency CBDC? And is CBDC a threat to traditional bank? This is actually lots of discussion on CBDC recent days. Yeah. Desmond, please.
Thanks, Prof. Cindy. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So generally, we don't see CBDC as a threat because if you look at many of these CBDCs, right, like JP Morgan using Singapore as an example, has been working with MAS in terms of rolling out some of these CBDC, like having trying to tokenize RTGS MEPS network that previously we all known as Project Ubin. So generally, I would say that there is lots of area that that can collaborate, and then definitely banks and central banks will work together closely in terms of promoting this CBDC. So what is from this Project Ubin, as well as just now Alan mentioned about Partia, right, where we have a DBS and all these Temasek as part of the using coins or blockchain technology to do the real-time clearing. What we are seeing as this is going to be where the next, I would say, the next frontier in terms of clearing.
Okay. Thanks, Desmond. Yeah, I think this is really some opinions really can enlighten us to understand the CBDC. And actually, in terms of a centralized financial system and the CBDC, I think CBDC anyway is the currency backed by the country, and it's quite different from what we discussed about all those cryptocurrencies, right? So anyway, I don't think CBDC will be a threat to the central bank system. Same with Desmond. Yeah, thanks again, Desmond. So I think there are really quite a few questions regarding the career suggestions. And we also have a speaker set up, Mr. Tayabi, and we know that actually you have a really extensive working experience in regulatory sectors, big institutions and fintechs. So I think maybe it's very beneficial if you could share a little bit in addition to Carrie's view on this front. Please, Shada, please.
Thank you, Prof. Cindy. I think maybe I'll just tackle a couple of questions here. One is about what are the critical skills that will enable someone to bridge between traditional banking and fintech. So my short answer to your question is be ready to set up printers if you're joining a smaller fintech. Because the reality is, you're setting up your own office and you'll be, leading things at a much more ground level. But on a serious note, I think the most important thing is tied to this, which is being open. You need to be open to wear multiple hats when it's required. In larger organizations, and I'm not just limiting it to financial institutions, the larger organizations, we all have a very defined set of roles, defined set of responsibilities, the KPIs that we have to meet. And generally, it doesn't change that often in the year. It's quite different when you're working for, I'm talking about these growing fintechs or, startups or mid-sized fintechs, not some unicorns, because in that environment, you probably have to do and learn a lot of new things on a daily basis, and your responsibilities also change as well. So be open, be ready to adopt new skill sets as quickly as possible. And like what Karis mentioned, be passionate. I mean, if you're passionate about technology, it only helps you transition your career from a large organization to a relatively, growing fintech. The other aspect that I'll probably highlight is, there are quite a few courses or, I would say programs that are available that are being offered by universities like NTU, as well as other institutes of higher learning. There are private players that are doing that as well. You should probably consider some of them. That only helps you sort of hone your skills better. But I wouldn't advise going against the experience that you have already, or skills that you've already gained for, maybe a decade or two that you've been working with a larger organization. So if you are into payments, I would suggest doing something similar to payments. If you're into investments and wealth management, doing something similar, because you need to add value, and you need to start adding value very quickly in a relatively small organization. Finally, network as much as possible. Talk to people who are in the industry, who are already, either have founded companies like Caris, or you have already been working at an operator or a senior management level, so you would be able to get the best of it. So it's about skill sets, being open, and finally networking. I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Mr. Tayabi. I think all these suggestions are very helpful, and time really passes fast. I think maybe round things off. Let's have the last question to Caris. So there is a question like, so traditionally, the private market products are made accessible to accredited investors and institutional investors only. Is reducing the ticket size of the deal the only criteria for broadening the accessibility? Caris?
Yeah, thanks for Cindy. And I see this question from Lynn. Yeah, I think for it is correct that traditionally the private market products are only accessible to the AIs and institutional investors. And the reason is because such products are typically higher in terms of sophistication. So as such, you would need to be an AI or II in order to participate. Now, if we were to just reduce the ticket size, I don't think that helps in broadening the accessibility. I think what we're looking and aiming to do is actually to offer such products to the wider community, right? So for example, at Minterest, what we do is we get a license from NBS to allow us to distribute products to the retail level. So i.e. anyone from, say for example, 18 years all the way to, in fact, our oldest investor is 83, who has interest in participating in such products can sign up. And through participating in our deals, they basically be part of the digital economy. So yes, in terms of providing access, it does help to reduce the ticket size. But what we're aiming to do is actually to democratize that to the wider community, such that whether you invest at $50 or $100 or even $1,000 or $1 million, you are able to see such deals, and that is the key access that we're trying to solve for us as fintech.
Yeah, thanks, Caris. Thanks, Ms. Liao. I think we are up for time. Let me thank all our speakers again, Ms. Liao, Ms. Lin, Ms. Ong, and Mr. Tayabi. Thank you so much for your sharings and support for our NBS Knowledge Lab. NBS Knowledge Lab is our thought leadership platform where we share research highlights and the latest business insights from our highly regarded faculty, industry partners, and alumni. Actually, NBS Knowledge Lab holds webinar every month. Please follow our website and social media account for the information. For all our audience, thank you again for joining us. The questions you raised are so good. I'm really sorry that we don't have time to address all the questions. After this, there will be a post-event survey pumping up later. So we will appreciate if you can spare a couple of minutes to finish the survey. I wish all of you a wonderful week ahead. Bye-bye now.